I didn't hear the scream. I only saw my daughter's mouth open and the light behind her flicker. It was the moment between frames on the Zoom call that wrecked me, when the pixels couldn't keep up with her anguish, when time paused like it wasn't sure whether to go forward or back, and then the call dropped. Just gone. That's how it started. Not with a gunshot or a car crash, with silence, with dropped Wi-Fi. My name is Thomas Kell. I'm 51 years old. I used to work in commercial litigation, contracts, mergers, clean suits and clearer lies. I've got a degree from Yale, a scar on my shin from falling off my bike in '86, and a half-full bottle of 14-year-old Oban in the cabinet behind me. I haven't been able to throw it out since the night she died, not because of the whiskey, because of what I saw reflected in that glass door. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. That's not what this is. This is the body I buried, and then dug up again. The whole thing, rotten all. My daughter's name was Eleanor. She was 14. You'll find her name etched on a grey slate stone in Forest Grove Cemetery, right under a withered cherry tree that never fully blooms. She was smart, fiercely kind, always suspicious of adults who smiled too much. She smelled like vanilla and pine when she came back from camp, and I used to pretend I didn't check her TikTok because I wanted to respect her privacy. Truth is, I couldn't bear to see how quickly she was becoming someone I didn't know how to protect. 2 years ago, my world cracked clean through. The day she screamed. She was at her mother's house, my ex-wife Rachel. We'd been divorced for 3 years at that point. Civil, mostly. Our arrangement was simple. 1 week on, 1 week off. Holidays alternated. We texted about school pickups and doctor appointments like corporate partners navigating a shared client. The night she screamed, it was a Tuesday, May 9th. I remember because I'd bought a frozen lasagna for when she came home Sunday. I still have it, in the freezer. I know what you're thinking. Why keep it? Why torture yourself? But you see, I need the rot. I need the reminder. Otherwise, I might start telling myself this was survivable. They said it was a seizure. That's what the hospital. Tonic-clonic seizure. Cardiac arrest. Subsequent asphyxiation. Rachel was pale in the ER waiting room. She wouldn't look at me. I asked her, screamed at her, what had happened. She said Eleanor had complained of headaches that week, that she hadn't wanted to, that she'd gotten dizzy in the kitchen and fallen, hit her head on the island corner, blood on the tile. She'd died before the ambulance got there. But something never sat right. Not with me, not with the shape of the scream. It wasn't the scream of someone who had just fallen. It was the scream of someone seeing something. Something she never wanted to see. That was the first crack, the hairline fracture, under my ribs, the part of me that whispered, no, that's not how it happened. I was not a spiritual man, still am not, but I started seeing her, not as a ghost. I'm not fucking crazy. In dreams, sure, but not normal dreams. These were twisted reels of her running barefoot through our old backyard, dragging a kite that never caught wind, calling out to me but not Dad. She was calling me Thomas, and she looked older, sometimes 70, sometimes 20, with bruises I didn't understand. Once her mouth was sewn shut with twine. I woke up screaming into my pillow for a week straight, and then I started looking. I became an investigator of grief, not the kind that reads books or attends group sessions in church basements. No, I opened browser tabs like surgical wounds. I watched our old home videos frame by frame. I studied the backgrounds. I listened to her voice over and over again, looking for something. My apartment filled with printed photos and notes, red ink circling smiles that felt off, circled hand postures, a man in the background at her last recital, whose face I didn't recognize. Rachel stopped responding to my messages after I accused her of hiding something. She changed her number the week after that. The night I drove by her house for the first time, only a month after Eleanor's funeral, I parked 3 houses down, turned off the lights and sat in the dark for 3 hours. No one came out, but the porch light never flickered, even in the wind, like the house was too still, like the kind of stillness that knows how to hold its breath. That's when I started keeping the notebook. I wrote in it every night, not just notes, but questions. Why did Eleanor scream? Why did Rachel hesitate when the paramedic asked her what medications Eleanor was on? Why did her browser history disappear the day before she died? I wasn't chasing conspiracy theories. I was collecting puzzle pieces that felt like they should fit, even if I didn't have the picture on the box. And somewhere in the middle of that, I lost my job. I stopped showing up. They gave me a 2-month grace period because of extenuating circumstances. But the calls dried up. The firm offered a quiet exit. I signed the papers, walked away with a severance that meant nothing, because my world had already ended. I'd become a ghost with a credit card and a growing obsession. And then I found it. Her text messages. I'd bought her an iPhone 2 years ago, and it was synced with my iCloud. I didn't know that until I logged in out of desperation and saw the backup folder, hundreds of messages, some to friends, some to me, and one thread buried, half deleted, that made my skin go cold. Contact name, D, date, range, March, May 9th. Only fragments remained, but I pieced them together. You said it wouldn't happen again. I don't like it when you come into my room at night. If you touch me again, I'll tell my dad. That last one, dated May 8th, the day before she died. Who the fuck was D? I had theories, but none of them made sense until I remembered a wedding we'd gone 2 years ago. Rachel's cousin David, late 40s, heavy-set, balding, used to babysit Eleanor when we lived in Wethersfield. I dug up an old Christmas card from a box I hadn't opened in a decade. There he was, arm around Rachel, Eleanor sitting in his lap smiling but stiff, and something inside me snapped. I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger is hot. This was cold. I felt my blood slow, like I was preparing for a kind of winter that would never end. And I knew, whatever had happened in that house on May 9th, it wasn't a seizure. It was a secret. A secret that had killed my daughter. I didn't know how to breathe with that realization. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just stared at the wall, watching the texture of the paint like it might offer me a way out. But there was no exit, only a narrowing tunnel. I had to know the truth. I had to see. I started with public records. David R. Adler, born July 19, lived in Wethersfield, then moved to Avon. 5 years ago, divorced, no kids, 2 DUIs. But nothing on his record that would have raised a flag, which in hindsight makes sense. Monsters don't usually get caught until someone else pays the price. I pulled every photo I had of him. I blew them up. I stared into his eyes, tried to figure out what my daughter had seen when he walked into her room at night, what she smelled, what she felt when his shadow blocked the hallway light. I imagined her pretending to sleep. I imagined her fists clenched under the covers. I imagined her whispering, "Don't touch me," and getting only silence in return. I started visiting his neighborhood. I told myself I was just confirming what I knew, but the truth is, I was already inside the orbit, already being pulled by something darker than grief. He lived in a split-level home on Aldridge Drive, white siding, red shutters, a porch swing that creaked. I sat across the street for hours, pretending to be on my phone, taking notes in my car's console. He walked with a limp I hadn't remembered, wore a blue fleece jacket, and always carried a black gym bag, never smiled at neighbors, took out the trash on Sundays, always double-bagged. One afternoon, I followed him to a hardware store. I parked 3 spaces away. He walked inside. I waited 10 minutes before going in, pretending to browse sockets and adhesives. I watched him from aisles away, saw what he bought: rope, a tarp, duct tape. My hands went numb. That night, I drank half the Oban, stared into the glass door again, wondering how many nights Eleanor had watched her bedroom doorknob twist without making a sound. I imagined her breath held behind her teeth, and I imagined her finally texting me, knowing I wouldn't see it until it was too late. And Rachel, God, Rachel. I confronted her the next day. I waited in the parking lot of her school. She teaches English Lit to bored 11th graders, and when she saw me, she almost turned back inside. "Tom, you can't. I need to talk." She looked thinner than I remembered, pale, tired. We walked to the edge of the lot where no one would hear us. I didn't ease into it. I showed her the text. Her face drained of color. "I don't know who that is," she said too quickly. "D," I said, "from Eleanor's messages." "You don't know who that is." She looked away, her jaw locked, her hands shook. "I didn't," she began. I thought she was being dramatic. "Kids text things, Tom. You know how she was, always intent." "I didn't think. You didn't think a man walking into her room at night was worth asking about." She never told me who. I thought she was talking about a nightmare. "No, you didn't want to know." That's when she cried, collapsed into herself right there in the parking lot, and something ugly stirred in me.
something like pity, but colder, detached, like I was watching a stranger mourn a child she never deserved. "I thought she meant you, Rachel," whispered. It hit like a backhand. "What?" "She was so angry with you. You were strict, controlling. She'd come back after weekends with you. And sometimes she wouldn't talk." I thought. I didn't know what to think. "You thought I almost hit her." I don't say that lightly. I've never hit a woman in my life. But in that moment I saw red. "She tried to tell you, Rach, and you chose to believe the version that let you sleep at night." She didn't deny it. And in that silence I knew she knew. Maybe not consciously, maybe not clearly, but part of her had always known. I left her there crying in the wind, and I didn't look back. That night, I started building a case, not for court, for myself, for the reckoning. Printouts, photos, voice memos. I recorded my thoughts at 3 a.m., whispering into my phone, so the neighbors wouldn't hear. I mapped our timelines, tracked David's movement, noted which nights Rachel had girls' nights out, and who had been watching Eleanor those nights. It added up. It all added up. But what truly shattered me, the true breaking point, was a voicemail I found by accident, buried in my old Google Voice account, time-stamped at May 8th, 11:07. Eleanor's voice, quiet, frantic. "Dad, I can't sleep. He's in the hallway again. I tried to tell Mom, but she says I'm imagining it." I locked the door. I pushed the chair in front of it. "But I don't think it'll hold. Please call me back. Please." I dropped the phone. I sat on the floor for an hour, holding my head, breathing in static. That was the moment I changed. Not like a movie. There wasn't a cut to black and the new man in the mirror. It was slower, more surgical, like someone was scooping parts of me out, replacing them with wire. I stopped eating. I slept in 2-hour increments. I stopped checking the news, emails, bills. My world became smaller, sharper. One night, I drove to David's house and stood in the backyard. Midnight, February wind like a I stood beneath his bedroom window, looking up, wondering what it had looked like from Eleanor's angle. That window was where her monster slept. And then I saw him, through the curtain, shirtless, sitting on his bed, watching something on a laptop, laughing. I imagined her scream again, and I felt nothing but clarity. No more doubt, no more waiting. It was time. I began planning in silence. You learn things, in grief, about patience, about watching, about how people fall into rhythms that can be broken, redirected, dismantled. David left his house every Thursday evening to go to a men's group, some anonymous gathering at the VFW about sobriety or faith. I followed him 3 weeks in a row to confirm. He stayed 2 hours, got back around 9:30, never varied. The 5th Thursday I broke into his house. I used the side window by the kitchen, popped the screen, took under a minute. I wore gloves, a hoodie. I knew where the cameras were. 2 fake ones on the porch. Nothing inside. I didn't steal anything. I looked. His bedroom was neat, methodical, no clutter. But his closet, that was something else. Inside a shoebox, taped shut, I found a USB stick and a bundle of photos. Eleanor was in them, not naked, not graphic, but invasive, taken from just outside her door. One of her brushing her hair, another of her asleep in bed, twisted in the sheets. My hands shook so hard I dropped the box, then the USB. I pocketed both and left. I drove home in silence, clutching the stick like it was a detonator. I plugged it in. There were 6 folders, each labeled with a girl's name, none of them older than 15. I opened Eleanor's folder lab. Inside were recordings, clips, mostly short. Some were blank, some were shaky, filmed through a crack in the door. One was 20 minutes long. In it, she sits on the floor, cross-legged, drawing. The angle shifts. Whoever was holding the camera adjusts, moves closer. Her head turns. She stares straight at the lens. "Stop," she says. The video ends. I vomited in the sink, not from the images, from the sound of her voice. That voice didn't belong to a girl. It belonged to someone who had seen too much and knew it wasn't going to stop. I made my decision that night. I didn't tell the police. I didn't call Rachel, because this wasn't justice anymore. This wasn't about right or wrong. This was about her, about the promise I had made, silently, the day she was born. I would protect her, even after, and I would make him understand what she felt in those final nights. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I studied his home, knew when he left for groceries, knew the code to his garage. From an Amazon delivery video I found on his neighbor's Ring camera, I bought what I needed in rope, plastic sheeting, an old stun gun off Craigslist from a guy who didn't ask questions. I rehearsed it, every movement, where to park, what time to enter, how to disable the breaker. But when the night came, nothing went as planned. March 4. I waited outside until he came home from the meeting. 9:31 p.m. He pulled into the driveway whistling. I waited 10 minutes, then moved. I cut the power from the outside panel, slipped in through the garage, wore a mask, held the stun gun like a crucifix. I found him in the kitchen, lighting a candle. He turned. I tased him. He hit the floor hard, convulsing. I tied him up, ankles, wrists, dragged him into the living room, propped him against the couch, taped his mouth, watched his eyes blink back fury and fear. I showed him the USB. You know what this is? He made a muffled sound. I didn't care. I played the clip, the one where Eleanor looks at the lens and says, "Stop." His eyes flickered. I leaned in, mask still on. "She asked you to stop." He writhed, tried to scream. I pressed the stun gun against his ribs. A jolt. He screamed through the tape. "I want you to know something," I said. I pulled down the mask, let him see my face. He stopped moving. "I'm her father." He shook his head violently. I pressed the gun again. Then I did what I came to do. But here's the part I never planned for. He broke, cried, shook, gagged against the tape, then nodded, over and over again. And when I pulled the tape off, he whispered. I tried to stop. That stopped me. He looked like a dying animal. "She reminded me of someone," he said. "I didn't touch her. I wanted to, but I didn't. I swear. I just watched. I stared at him. "You just watched." He nodded. "I was sick. I am sick. But I didn't touch her." My hand trembled. "You think that's better?" I asked. "No," he whispered. "But it's the truth." And something shattered in me, because I believed him, and I hated him even more for that, because it meant Eleanor had died terrified not from the act, but from the threat of it, from the silence, from being watched. She died carrying the burden of a terror that had no climax, no proof, and that meant I couldn't even bring him to court, couldn't prove anything. All I had was a man with bad intentions and a dead daughter, who never got to be heard. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to wipe his face off the earth, but instead I stood there, watching him cry, and for the first time in my life, I understood what impotence felt like. True, soul-deep impotence. I didn't kill him. I left him there, tied, shaking, alive. I took the USB. I burned it in my sink. I drove until sunrise. I didn't go home. I didn't go anywhere. I just kept driving. I wish I could say I let go after that night, that I walked away, having chosen mercy, and that the road ahead was somehow lighter. But that's not what happened, because mercy wasn't what I gave him. Not really. It started a few days later. The itch behind the eyes, the whispers in my own voice telling me it wasn't enough. He was still out there, still sleeping, still eating, still existing. Eleanor wasn't, and that imbalance, that cosmic weight would not set. I told myself I wasn't going to kill him, but that didn't mean I was done. I started sending him pieces of his own life, an envelope in the mail, no return address, with a still frame from his own video, another envelope 2 days later. Eleanor's last message, printed in red ink, then a burner phone, with a single number programmed into it. Mine. No calls, just silence. I knew he'd start unraveling. I wanted him to feel watched. I wanted him to feel hunted, to live inside the same shadow he'd poured over my daughter's life. I started taking photos of his front porch, his trash bins, his mailbox, left them on his windshield. I left a child's sock on his doorstep, not Eleanor's, just one I bought at Goodwill. But it worked. He boarded up his windows after that. I waited until he started slipping. He called in sick to work, left his car running in the driveway one night for an hour before realizing it. He began buying liquor again, stacks of bottles in brown paper bags. He was breaking, and still it wasn't enough. Not because I wanted to see him suffer, because I wanted to understand why it hadn't satisfied me. Why, with all the tools of vengeance in my hands, I still felt hollow. I started following him again, not just to his house, to the grocery store, the pharmacy, a gas station where he bought condoms and aspirin in the same transaction. I imagined him preparing for his next fixation, next window, next victim, and that's when it changed. I started following them, the girls, the ones I suspected he was watching. I know how that sounds, but I wasn't stalking them. I was trying to see what he saw, trying to find the cues, to get inside the monster's head, and maybe, somehow root it out of the world. One girl, Lydia, 13, wore a red backpack with anime pins. I saw him follow her home from the CVS. I stood across the street while she went inside. He paused at the corner, just long enough to remember her address. That night, I left him a final message, a Polaroid of me standing outside his bedroom window. The next morning, he left town, just like that, gone, packed up, and drove off, left the house dark, mail piling up, blinds closed, and still I felt nothing, no triumph, no closure, just more questions. Was it over? Had I stopped something? Or had I simply chased him to a new field, to new prey, and told myself I'd done good? I began losing time after that. Days would pass, and I wouldn't know what I'd eat. I'd wake up and find notes on my desk, written in my own hand. I didn't remember writing. One said, "You didn't save her, you only punished him." Another, "Is this what a father is?" I stopped shaving, stopped answering texts from the 2 friends I had left, stopped paying rent. I didn't care. I went back to the place where she screamed, Rachel's house. She'd moved out, sold it 6 months after Eleanor died. New family lived there now, minivan in the driveway, pink scooter on the porch. I parked across the street and stared at that window. I imagined her voice, her laugh, the way she used to ask me to check under the bed even at 10 years old. And then I saw the new girl, 7, maybe 8, dark hair, in her room, leaning against the glass, drawing on it with a marker. That's when I knew I hadn't done anything. Not really. I just moved the threat, covered it, delayed it. David would do it again. Maybe not the same way, maybe not with cameras, but the impulse was still alive in him, and all I'd done was make it quieter, and in doing so, I'd let the world move on. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car outside that house until the sun came up, thinking about how many men like him there are, how many houses like that one, how many daughters are alone in their rooms, with fear they don't have words for, and how many fathers are asleep, dreaming of being protectors, while the wolves crawl through unlocked doors. So I made a choice. I started sending letters, anonymous, to every father I could find, who had a daughter in that neighborhood. Warnings, descriptions, maps, evidence. I sent 10 the first week, 20 the next, then statewide. I built a database, started compiling names, patterns, photos, registry data, cross-referenced with school districts, Facebook groups, Reddit threads, even whispers on Discord forums. I was hunting, not just David anymore, all of them, any man who even resembled what had taken Eleanor's safety from her. It became my obsession. I stopped being Thomas Kell. I became something else, a shadow version of myself, a mirror I couldn't look into, and still I didn't feel any closer to her. The first time I saw her again, I was asleep, at least I think I was. She stood at the edge of my bed in the blue wash of early morning. Eleanor, hair longer than I remembered, wearing that oversized hoodie she used to live in. Her arms were folded, like she was cold or angry. She didn't say anything, just stared, and I remember feeling ashamed, not relief, not joy, shame. I reached for her, and she stepped back into the dark. I woke with my chest pounding. I told myself it was a dream, but it wasn't. It was her, or what I've made of her. A projection, a ghost, a judge, and she's been with me ever since. Sometimes I see her in reflections, storefronts, windows, puddles. She's never smiling, never speaking, just watching. I moved into a 1-bedroom above a bait shop in Guildford. The walls smell like salt and fish. The landlord doesn't ask questions. I still get the occasional envelope in the mail, photos of David. Someone's watching him now, not me. I haven't touched the database in months. It keeps growing without me. I'm not sure if that makes me proud or terrified, maybe both. Last week, a reporter showed up at my door, young woman, early 20s, nervous. She asked if I was Thomas Kell. I lied, said he'd moved, no forwarding address. She said she was investigating a vigilante ring, fathers for daughters. She called. Apparently that's what they're calling it online. I told her I'd never heard of it. She gave me a look up. I can't quite explain. Not suspicion, pity. Maybe, like she knew I was lying, but also knew I had a reason. She left me her card. It's still sitting on the table, under my whiskey glass. I haven't called her. What would I say? That I became what I hated, that I let grief sculpt me into a tool I can't put down, that every night, I stare at the ceiling wondering if Eleanor would have wanted me to stop, or worse, if she wouldn't care, if she died thinking I didn't hear her, and in some awful way, she'd be right. I didn't hear her, not when it mattered. Now I hear nothing but her. Sometimes I wonder if David remembers my face, if he dreams of the mask, the stun gun, the voice, if he ever really changed. or if he just learned to hide better. I have no answers, no justice, no end, only echoes of footsteps in the hall, of her voice on a phone I didn't pick up, of the silence afterward, and the silence now, because in the end revenge wasn't fire, it was ice, cold, heavy, endless, and I carry it with me, everywhere.